The morning sun crawled lazily across the cracked windows of a small-town diner, its golden rays painting the faded leather booths and the scent of burnt coffee filling the air. At the corner table sat a man who seemed built from silence itself, broad shoulders beneath a worn flannel shirt, his face rough with stubble and time, eyes that had seen too much and said too little. His name was Ethan Cole, a single father and war veteran who had once led men into the worst fires of humanity and returned home carrying both visible and invisible scars. People whispered when he walked past. Some called him the broken soldier. Others stared at the deep marks that ran along his arms and neck, their curiosity sharpened into cruelty. Yet Ethan never fought back. He had fought enough. Now, his battles were quieter, raising his 8-year-old daughter Lily, making sure she smiled despite the shadows that followed him. Every morning, he'd walk her to school, holding her small hand, ignoring the looks of the parents who whispered. He'd then stop by the diner to sip his coffee before heading to his job at the mechanic's garage. It was a simple life, but peace had always been loud for Ethan. That day, the peace would shatter in the most unexpected way. As he sat quietly at the counter, 3 young soldiers in fresh uniforms entered, their laughter cutting through the quiet hum of the diner. They were new to the nearby base, young, proud, and too sure of themselves. "Hey, look at that guy," one of them muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, nodding toward Ethan's arm where the sleeve had written up, revealing the jagged, healed scars. "Man, what happened to you? Lose a fight with a bear?" The others snickered. Ethan didn't look up. He had heard it all before, the jokes, the mockery, the pity. The waitress, an older woman named Martha, shot the soldiers a warning look. "Show some respect," she said, her voice low but firm. "That man's done more for this country than you can imagine." The soldiers just shrugged, smirking, and one of them leaned closer. "Oh yeah? Then why's he hiding here like some washed-up vet? Bet those scars ain't from bravery, probably from running." A quiet fell over the diner. The insult hung in the air like smoke. Ethan looked up slowly, his eyes calm but cold. "You done?" he asked simply. The soldiers looked at each other and laughed. One of them noticed a faint tattoo peeking out from under Ethan's sleeve, a black ink marking of a sword crossed with wings and the number 117 below it. "Nice tattoo, old man," one sneered. "Trying to look tough?" Ethan just stood, dropped a few bills on the counter, and walked out without a word. But Martha noticed something in his eyes, not anger, not sadness, but the kind of tired that came from carrying ghosts no one else could see. Outside, the wind carried dust across the parking lot as Ethan climbed into his old truck. He glanced at the small photo hanging from the rearview mirror, a picture of him in uniform, holding baby Lily. He exhaled slowly. He wasn't angry at the soldiers, they didn't know what that tattoo meant, what that number represented. Only a few ever would. Later that day, as he worked under the hood of a car, his foreman, an old Marine named Harris, approached him. "Heard you had company at the diner," Harris said, wiping grease from his hands. Ethan just grunted. Harris chuckled. "Don't mind those kids. They haven't seen what real soldiers look like." Ethan smirked faintly. "Neither should they," he replied, tightening a bolt. "That's the point of the next generation, isn't it?" Harris nodded. "Still, you ever think about re-enlisting? The Army's calling back some vets for special training programs. They're sending a general down here next week to scout local talent." Ethan shook his head. "I've done my time." But fate had other plans. The next morning, as he dropped Lily at school, she hugged him tighter than usual. "Daddy," she said, looking up with wide, honest eyes, "why do people stare at you?" Ethan crouched, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because they see my scars, honey. But scars just mean you survived." She smiled softly. "Then you're the strongest dad ever." He smiled back, his heart tightening with pride and pain. "Maybe," he said. "Now go be brave too." That afternoon, the diner was busier than usual. Word had spread that a high-ranking female general from the base was visiting to meet with some veterans for a community project. The same 3 soldiers who had mocked Ethan earlier were there again, joking and laughing. When the door opened, the room fell silent. A tall woman in a pristine blue uniform stepped in, General Ava Stone, a legend in the military. Her eyes were sharp, posture unshakable, metals gleaming under the light. She took a seat, nodding politely at the waitress. Ethan, unaware of who she was, sat a few booths away, sipping coffee after work. When the young soldiers noticed him again, one whispered, "There's our old friend. Let's show the general what kind of locals we have here." They laughed quietly and approached Ethan again, mock salutes and smirks ready. "Still hiding behind your coffee, Grandpa," one said. Before Ethan could respond, General Ava turned slightly, her gaze landing on the men. "At ease, soldiers," she said firmly. "What seems to be the issue?" One of them gestured toward Ethan. "Just having a little fun, ma'am. Local vet here's been showing off his scars." Ava's expression hardened. She turned her eyes toward Ethan, and then froze. Her breath caught. Her gaze dropped to his forearm, to the tattoo half hidden under his sleeve. For a second, her composure cracked. "That unit mark," she whispered. The soldiers looked at her, confused. Ava stood slowly, her boots echoing on the diner floor. "Sergeant Cole," she asked softly. The diner went silent. Ethan looked up, puzzled. "Ma'am." She stepped closer, eyes locked on the ink, the sword, the wings. "And the number 117. You were 117th Recon, weren't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "A long time ago." Ava swallowed hard, emotion flickering in her usually steady tone. "You led the ridge extraction in Kandahar. I read every report. You saved 42 soldiers that day," her voice broke slightly. "Including my brother." The soldiers froze, their smirks vanishing instantly. The silence in the diner grew heavy. Ethan blinked, remembering the chaos of that day, the gunfire, the smoke, the blood. He hadn't known names, just missions, and survival. Ava saluted sharply. "It's an honor, Sergeant." The young soldiers looked down, faces pale with shame. One whispered, "Sir, we didn't know." Ethan looked at them, his expression unreadable. "Now you do," he said quietly. "So next time, don't judge the scars you don't understand." Ava nodded with quiet respect. "This man isn't just a veteran," she said to the soldiers, voice commanding. "He's a hero whose courage is written on his skin." Ethan just sighed softly, glancing toward the window where the sun was setting. "Heroes are the ones who made it home," he murmured. "The rest of us, we just remember." The diner stayed silent for a long time after that. When Ethan finally stood to leave, Ava offered a hand. "If you ever want to rejoin us, Sergeant, we could use men like you again." Ethan smiled faintly. "Ma'am, I've got a new mission now," he said, thinking of Lily. "And she's waiting for dinner." Ava smiled back, understanding perfectly. As Ethan stepped outside into the amber light, the soldiers inside sat still, humbled beyond words. Some scars, they realized, weren't marks of weakness, they were symbols of sacrifice. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt no shame in the man he had become. Because sometimes, it takes the recognition of a stranger to remind you who you really are.